Okey dokey. Whenever you're ready.
All right. Are the judges ready? In the horseback riding industry, we tend to think of accidents as things that happen to inexperienced riders or riders who aren't riding properly or safely. But in reality, an accident can happen to anyone, at any time, at any place.
Oh.
Now, this accident looks really bad, but I'm happy to say that this girl suffered no major head trauma due to the fact that she was wearing her helmet. Hi, my name is Nicole Worth. I'm from the Joco Rockin' Riders 4-H Horse Club from Johnson County, North Carolina, and I'm here today to present to you on the safety in helmets. Today we're gonna look at the hard facts. We're gonna look at the injuries that occur, what a helmet does to prevent those injuries, how to wear a helmet correctly, standards for helmets, new technologies in industry, reasons people choose not to wear helmets, and those leading the charge to change stigma. I want to start off by throwing some hard facts at you. First, horseback riding is identified as one of the highest risk activities for any individual to partake in. Injuries occur most frequently in youth under 21, especially those aged 10 to 14. This is simply a common time to start taking on bigger horses and bigger challenges. 1 in 5 injuries are a form of traumatic brain injury, also known as concussion. 60% of all riding fatalities occur as a result of traumatic brain injury. And finally, a fall from just 2 feet. 2 feet's right here at my knee can cause a traumatic brain injury. And if you think, most riders are sitting at about 7 to 8 feet in the air. Let's take a closer look at the injuries that occur. With horseback riders, it's not so much about repetitive contact hits, the way it is with, say, football or rugby, but it's more about one big bang. It's more about the severity of the impact. As you can see in this top right-hand diagram, you have an initial zone of impact where the force was directly applied, but you also have a secondary point of impact on the opposite side of where the force was applied that results when the brain bounces away from that first impact zone. This leads to more severe injuries that can incorporate skull fractures and bleeding in the brain. Now, these injuries are combined with the idea of, oh, I'm fine. Many riders choose to get right back on their horse after a fall, to keep training or to discipline if necessary. But medical professionals agree that you need to wait. You need to be diagnosed by a medical professional as to whether or not you're able to ride again, especially since a rider may not always be able to determine the severity of their own injury. Sadly, the majority of these injuries are preventable. It's estimated that between 70 to 80% of all riding injuries and fatalities that are a result of traumatic brain injuries could be prevented by wearing a helmet. Here is the Sport Concussion Assessment Tool, also known as the SCAT tool. This is the SCAT-5, which is the most updated version, and this is what medical professionals use to determine whether or not you have suffered some form of traumatic brain injury. It's a checklist of all the symptoms that might occur that a medical professional goes down with the affected individual. Now, what does a helmet do to prevent those injuries? Well, a helmet protects your head in 2 major ways. First, it has this hard outer shell to reduce penetration by objects such as sticks or stones. It also has this foam inner core that reduces and absorbs the shock and protects the rider's head. The design of a helmet, unlike the design of, say, a bike helmet, is designed to account for different speeds, different terrains, and even the different types of hits that a rider might have. It's designed to cover more of your head, from just above your eyebrows all the way around to the base of your skull, and it's designed to secure properly with a harness system, one that doesn't interfere with a rider's natural balance. So how do you wear a helmet correctly? Well, to wear a helmet correctly, you need to take into account several things. The first of which is your fit to head. You want to measure your head for proper fit with a measuring tape around the circumference of your head. When you do so, you want to make sure that your hair is in the style that you intend to wear it in while riding. Your hair can lead to a bigger or smaller fit depending on how you wear it. You also want to perform a forehead check. When you put your helmet on, it should sit just above your eyebrows again, and when you wiggle the skin here, the helmet should move with it. But when you take the helmet off, it should not have been so tight as to leave indentation marks in your forehead. You also want to check the amount of padding and ventilation. While these things do not directly impact the fit of a helmet, they can lead to a more comfortable fit, which in turn could lead to you wearing it more frequently. You also want to look at replacing your helmet. Your helmet should be replaced after any kind of fall or impact, as this can reduce the size of that foam core, which would not protect your head properly for a second fall. You also want to look at replacing your helmet even if you don't have any kind of fall or impact after 5 years. I don't know about you guys, but I'm guilty about leaving my helmet out in all kinds of weather conditions, and these conditions can deteriorate the quality of that foam core. Now, what standards are helmets held to protect your head? Well, the American Society for Testing and Materials determines a standard, and the current one is standard F1163. This standard determines the standards for testing, which include the size of the model wearing the helmet, the different forces that a helmet should be able to withstand, as well as the different testing surfaces that a helmet will land on. Then, it is reviewed every 5 years to keep up with new trends in safety and in technology. The SEI, the Safety and Equipment Institute, then takes this standard and reviews helmet manufacturers, who are required to put forth a design and a prototype when they would like to put a new model on the market. These tests are for quality and capability of the helmets. They are done both at the factory where the helmets will be produced and at a separate research institute to ensure accountability. These tests are for quality and capability, which can include penetration tests to test that hard outer shell, impact tests to test that foam core, and side distortion tests, which test what I like to call the crushability of a helmet, as you saw evidenced earlier. Now let's look at new technologies that are emerging on the market. The first of which is the Multi-Directional Impact Protection System, commonly known as MIPS. This is a second inner shell that connects to the outer shell by way of small pins. This inner shell allows the outer shell to rotate slightly upon impact, which allows for a greater sliding ability of the helmet instead of a stick. This sliding ability reduces force put on the back of your head, including the base of your skull and even your spinal cord. Next up, we have the iStock crash sensor technology. This is a small sensor that attaches to the back of a helmet, and in the event of a fall, can sense whether or not the force was great enough for you to incur some kind of traumatic brain injury. The sensor then sends this information to an app on your phone, which also pinpoints the exact location of the fall in case emergency services are needed. Finally, I'd like to discuss the potential for folding materials. In fact, Charles Owen, a major helmet manufacturer, just received a massive grant in order to develop new materials for helmets that would design this outer shell. These materials would be designed to fold upon impact instead of necessarily crush, which would lead to a better protection for your head. So with all of the safety that a helmet can provide you, why do people choose not to wear helmets? Well, some are simply not educated on all the benefits that a helmet can provide. They aren't aware of the staggering injury statistics, and they aren't aware of how a helmet can reduce them. Others quote the idea of experience. I'm an experienced rider. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to wear a helmet. Well, my trainer had been riding her entire life, and she was just sitting on a horse when a piece of paper blew by and it spooked. She ended up on the ground with massive traumatic brain injury that still impacts her today, many years later. Others say it's not tradition, it's not the style that everybody's worn. Well, a style has to come from somewhere, and to quote former US Olympian Michael Barrasone, if helmets were the style, then everybody would be wearing them. Finally, people say it's not cool. Oh, helmets are kind of blocky, they're kind of ugly, I don't want to wear one because it doesn't look cool. Well, I want to introduce you to two people looking to change that idea. First, we have Miss Courtney Kingdye. She was a former US Olympian who suffered an accident while practicing. She was riding a horse around the ring when it slipped, and she ended up on the ground underneath its hooves. She was in a coma for 3 months with her traumatic brain injury. Now she is recovering and now hopes to compete as a para-Olympian. But more importantly, when her accident occurred, it opened many people's eyes to the fact that if she was such a great rider and she knew what she was doing, and an accident still happened to her, then maybe it could happen to me. And many people started wearing their helmets after they read about her accident in the news. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Miss Fallon Taylor. She is a barrel racer who also suffered an accident while practicing. Her horse spooked while sliding, and she was sent 12 feet into the air. She ended up on the ground with her skull in 4 pieces. Since then, she's come back and is now a helmet ambassador working with Troxel on a new line of stylish new helmets. Amongst younger generations, she's also inspired the hashtag #WhatTheHelmet, which encourages riders to post pictures and videos of themselves wearing their helmets and riding safely. In summary, today we've covered the hard facts, we've looked at some of the injuries that occur, as well as what a helmet does to prevent them. We've looked at how to wear a helmet correctly and the standards that helmets are held to, as well as new technologies, reasons people choose not to wear helmets, and those leading the charge to change stigma. In conclusion, a traumatic brain injury is unlike any other injury because 1 minute you're a happy, healthy human being, and the next minute your life is changed forever. A traumatic brain injury not only affects your health, but it affects the quality and capability that you have for the rest of your life. So why wouldn't you choose to wear something that could protect your head? Why wouldn't you choose to protect something that could reduce your chances of incurring one of these injuries? Why wouldn't you want to protect the rest of your life? Here are some of the citations that I've used in my presentation today. They include the University of Connecticut's Research Center, the Cleveland Neurological Center, ABC News, several horse magazines, as well as other scholarly journals. At this time, do the judges have any questions?
Yep. How can we get the cowboys to understand this?
So the question posed is, how do we get the cowboys to understand this? Unfortunately, it's hard to say. Obviously you can see that there are many reasons to wear a helmet. They provide safety, they protect against injuries, newer styles on the market. They look cool, in my opinion they look cool. But what it comes down to for a lot of the cowboys that I know is tradition. And it's the tradition that they have been wearing cowboy hats for many, many years, and that's just the way it is. So
Do you think
unfortunately,
it'll take a tragic accident, hopefully not one that's fatal,
unfortunately,
before
yes.
one of them realizes the necessity?
Unfortunately, yes, I do think it will take some kind of tragedy, like Courtney Kingdye or Fallon Taylor's injuries, for them to start changing their minds.
Do you think the associations have a responsibility to require helmets of some sort?
So the question posed is, do the associations have a responsibility to create rules regarding helmets? And I think the answer depends on what type of riding and what type of association you're looking at. Many associations already are starting to implement helmet rules. The USEF, the FEI is looking at helmet rules. These are all equestrian organizations. I will say that with vaulting, there are different rules in place because vaulting, a helmet, if you look at the studies and you look at how the vaulters are trained, a helmet would actually negatively impact their riding ability. So I think it just depends.
No, because you sort of took the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you asked two questions. Actually, what I was looking at was, back in the day, it used to just be, the ASTM logo was always what we were looking for. So SEI is a larger body over that now, is my understanding from your presentation. So really, as you dropped off these helmets, so the answer is everything needs to say SEI on it now. Is that correct?
So the question posed is, do helmets need to carry both the ASTM and SEI logo?
Yeah, well, back in the day, I was only familiar with the ASTM, so in other words, SEI is above it, and are they logoed both ways, or just SEI, is my question.
So,
I'm just not used to this.
so the American Society of Testing Materials so they create the standard. They look
Right.
at all the injury reports, they look at all the new technology and the new safety practices, and they determine the standard that a helmet must be held to. The different, like I said earlier, the different kinds of forces that it has to incur. And they also create the standards for testing the actual helmets. It's the Safety and Equipment Institute that actually takes this standard and implements it. They're the ones who are testing those prototypes, who are going out to helmet manufacturers, and helmet manufacturers are held responsible by the Safety and Equipment Institute.
Okay.
So the logo is actually required to have both of them on it.
Okay, that was the question.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.